and welcome to the League of Superfans. Today we have random Jets fan Rob talking Jets and their hire of the new offensive coordinator, Nathaniel Hackett. Welcome, Rob.
Thanks for having me, Joe. I'm excited to be here.
We're here today to talk about how you feel about the state of the franchise of the Jets and the hire of Nathaniel Hackett.
Yeah, honestly, it's one of those moves. I don't hate it. I don't love it. I think it's a good hire. I think it's the direction they needed to go. I think they need someone in there who is an actual adult and has had play calling experience. I mean, if you look solely at the situation with the Broncos last year, you might think this is the worst hire in history. This is Adam Gase 2.0, but you have to dive a little deeper into that. He obviously had a lot of success as the Packers OC. Granted, is with Aaron Rodgers, top 5, top 10 quarterback of all time, but the and maybe Matt LaFleur, Mike LaFleur's big brother, maybe he was the one calling the plays and stuff like that, but I mean, Nathaniel Hackett had a big part in the red zone offense and scoring, moving the ball down the field, and that's just something the Jets couldn't do last year. Their red zone offense was absolutely terrible. Even on that little winning streak they had, I think it really came into light during the Vikings game when they got into the red zone 6 times and couldn't score. You can put that on the quarterback, but when you had someone like Mike White have the game that he did and had the ability to move the ball down the field, threw for over 300 yards. Once they got down to the red zone, that to me is all on the play caller. Just the inability to scheme up anything to get guys open, anything creative enough to get the ball in the end zone. You saw, the Jets were first and goal at one point, and then it was second and goal, third and goal, and they on first and goal they ran the ball with Bam Knight. He gained about 4 or 5 yards, and then they stopped altogether, and it just made no sense. The play calling made no sense. Like I said, just the inability to really scheme up anything creative. It was very predictable, the offense. So I think having a guy in here like Nathaniel Hackett, who has had experience with underwhelming quarterbacks like EJ Manuel when he was with the Bills, and also Blake Bortles in 2017 with the Jags team that went to the AFC Championship game. He really had a really good ability to hide the weakness of that offense, which was Blake Bortles. They were tops in scoring that year. I think top 5, putting points on the board, yards. They were one of the better offenses. They said when he was with the Bills and EJ Manuel, another underwhelming quarterback. They were 9. They went 9-7, I think that year, and definitely overperformed. And I think they were maybe top 5 or top 6 in the league in scoring and yards and stuff like that. Nothing personal against Mike LaFleur, but he was just kind of in over his head at that point. But even with the hiring Nathaniel Hackett, something I would like to see them do is bring in one of these younger guys like Brian Johnson, Kevin Patullo from the Eagles. That is one of those new hot young assistants that are being looked at for OC. And I would like them to bring in someone like that and give them the quote unquote title of assistant OC, so that they can kind of learn on the job without having the responsibilities of calling the plays, but then it also brings in a fresh look, might bring a little innovation. Maybe you can do some of the things that the Eagles are doing, which, as we all know, is top 2, top 3 teams in football this year, and kind of learn from them as much as they can learn from us. And who knows, maybe a few years down the road, if they're still there, Nathaniel Hackett doesn't work out, then you promote them, kind of build a pipeline of coaching, someone that's been around the system, someone that's grown with the system. So I would really like to see something like that. But granted, I mean, last season it wasn't all on LaFleur. I think he was a big part of it. He was probably the biggest culprit. But I think, quarterback play obviously played into that. Zach probably had the worst statistical quarterback year that the Jets have ever seen, minus Christian Hackenberg, who never stepped on the field. Um, but again, that goes into the coaching staff. That goes into the OC, who is supposed to help develop him. It was Zach's second year, and he got worse. I don't. How does that happen when you have a competent coaching staff around him on the offensive side of the ball? And then the quarterbacks coach. I don't know if supposedly have one, but I don't know if he even exists because you never hear about him. Again, Zach regressed. And granted, the offense looked better with other quarterbacks like Mike White and to an extent Joe Flacco. But last year you had Mike White, Flacco, Josh Johnson, who's been on about 30 different teams in the league. The offense did look better. They moved the ball better. But again, it just goes back to not being able to put points on the board. And that's coaching. That's not being able to scheme anything up. There were plenty of times on, second and short, third and short, where the play calling just leaves you scratching your head. Be 3rd and 1, and then, you have LaFleur calling go routes, and it doesn't make sense. Last year, which is weird because last year you saw a lot more innovation, especially in the later parts of the year where, you had Braxton Berrios, who was your best receiver because everyone else is hurt. Corey Davis was hurt. Elijah Moore was hurt. Denzel Mims, they didn't use him for whatever reason. So you guys like Vincent Smith, Braxton Berrios, and you had more innovation though. So I think us as Jets fans, we were all excited coming into this year. Like I said, second year in the system, better weapons, better players, but for whatever reason, just got away from that creativity, and we ended up on a 6-game losing streak to close out the season and failed to score a touchdown in the last 3 games. So here you are now with Nate Hackett, but I personally feel comfortable with it. Also brought in Keith Carter, the offensive line coach, former offensive line coach of the Tennessee Titans, who has a really good reputation. Titans, minus last year because of injuries, have had some of the best offensive line play in the league and running game in the league. Granted, they have Derrick Henry, but you can't do one without the other. So I think that is just as important of a hire as Nate Hackett. Try to build a little more cohesion, a little more balance in that offense. And because this year we got away from the running game all the time, and it seemed non-existent the last 3-4 games. It was just non-existent. It wasn't there. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it's a good hire, both of them. Curious to see if they're going to bring in a quarterback's coach or if they're just going to roll with what they have now and Nate Hackett.
What do you think in regards to Hackett? I think it's obvious that he used to be the OC for Aaron Rodgers. Do you think is that why they brought in Hackett? Is that what the hopes are for the Jets? Because they already stated that they're going with a different quarterback this year. They want to bring in a veteran quarterback. They got a good team that's ready to compete now. So you need somebody better. You can't rely on Zach Wilson. Do you see Hackett as being the facilitator to bring Aaron Rodgers up to New York?
Yes and no. I think he'll play a big part if Rodgers comes over here, but Denver brought him in last year with the expectation of, okay, we're going to get Rodgers now, and then we're going to, we have the weapons in place. I don't think with the state that they're in right now, with Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh being on the hot seat, I don't think they brought in Nate Hackett to solely be the reason why Aaron Rodgers comes here. Because then if he doesn't, then what do? Is he able to work with another quarterback? Was it specifically because of Aaron Rodgers? Now what do we do? So I don't think so. I think they brought him in because his ability to have a balanced running and passing game. They brought him in because he has experience. They brought him in because he's run in different systems. They brought him in because he's had success with other underwhelming quarterbacks. I think the big reason they brought him in was because of that diversity and hope that he can work with Zach. Because if you're bringing in Aaron Rodgers, right, what the question is, what's the plan after Aaron Rodgers then? If you brought him in specifically for Aaron Rodgers plays another year or two, okay, so then what do you do? Because you have to have faith that Zach can still develop and still play at a high level or high enough level for you to win games. Because Aaron Rodgers retires and you have Zach Wilson and Mike White on your roster, and that's it. Then what? Do you scramble to search for that next veteran quarterback that might be tradable or might be on the market or might be let go? Because if in this league, if the good quarterbacks, for the most part, they they don't wiggle free. Or is your plan to, okay, now we go back to the draft? Okay, well now you're in the same situation you were with Zach. You have an unknown quarterback. Um, you can bring in like a low level veteran quarterback like a Tannehill or something like that, mid level. Should come low level, but I don't think he was brought here specifically for Aaron Rodgers. Just because then the question is, okay, so what do you do after Aaron Rodgers? And if that's the sole reason, then why is Nate Hackett here? If Rodgers only going to be here for a year or two.
Well, it makes a lot of sense. If I'm a Jets fan, I don't hate the hire just because it's, it gives you the possibility of, hey, maybe we get Aaron Rodgers, but also what he did in 2017 with the Jaguars and Bortles. I'm looking to that specifically to give me
Mm.
hope if I'm
Yeah,
a
for
Jets fan.
sure. For sure. Like I said, that year he had to do a lot to hide that big deficiency on offense, which was Blake Bortles. And they made all the way to the championship game. Um, Fortunately, lost to the Patriots, of course, but he did a lot of good things with that roster that year on that offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, so, well, you got a new offensive coordinator, and they've already come out. We already said it. They're getting a new quarterback this offseason. Next year, there's a lot of guys available this offseason. This is only 5 of them. But if you guys go with a new quarterback, who would you prefer? What's your top 3?
Well, I think my top three is kind of the same as everyone else's: Rodgers, Lamar, and Derek Carr. Not in that, maybe not specifically in that order. Do I think Lamar is getting moved? I don't think so, unless you completely blow the Ravens out of the water with an offer. But at that point, you're kind of playing Russian roulette a little bit. It's his first time in a new system. He has had the lower body injuries the past 2 years. Can he get back to that 2019 MVP form? You're kind of playing with fire a little bit with Lamar. Personally, I think he might be worth the risk depending on the trade compensation. Um, Aaron Rodgers, I think it's probably like 70-30. He probably comes here. The thing with that though is Rodgers is known to be flaky. He's known to drag things out. So if you're not 100% sure he's coming here as Joe Douglas and that front office staff of the Jets, I think if you're not 100% sure and he starts dragging this thing out and dragging this thing out, I think you have to just go make the deal for Carr. You can't take that risk of, okay, maybe he's probably going to come here, but what if? Um, so personally, I think as for Joe Douglas, I would kind of give it a deadline. Like, okay, if we're not moving in the right direction to get this thing done by February 20th, I don't know, just a random date, February 20th, then we just put in an offer for Carr and just get him. Is he as good as Rodgers? No, but he's consistent. You're going to consistently get 4,000 yards, 25 plus touchdowns. He's been in multiple offenses, been in multiple coaching staffs. Um, I think so. Between Carr and Rodgers, I think they're the most likely. I would prefer Rodgers, even for that 2 years. I would prefer him. Like I said, the only thing that kind of scares me a little bit and makes me a little nervous is that, okay, what do we do life after Rodgers? Whereas Derek Carr, you have a few more years. by year 3 of his contract, assuming it's a 4-year deal, you can draft somebody either, one of the top rounds, mid rounds, whatever, help have them develop under Carr, because if Carr is still here, that means Nate Hack is probably still here, and they're doing a pretty good job on offense, and they've shown an ability to develop the offense and the players in it. Um, but yeah, I mean, Rodgers for me is 1A, Carr is 1B. If Lamar was more realistic, I would say Lamar is number one. Just looking at the screen, I want nothing to do with Jimmy G. He's never been able to stay healthy. Is he a good quarterback? Yeah, I think him and Carr kind of on the same level. I think Carr's a little bit higher because he's a little more mobile and he's healthy. He's always healthy. I want nothing to do with Jimmy. Plus, it's going to cost you like 35 million to keep him here. Um, Baker, I mean, if they wanted him to bring him in to compete for a backup spot, then sure, but I don't think he's going to do that. I think that's if you bring in Baker Mayfield, anyone less than Derek Carr, basically anyone less than Derek Carr, I think something's gone horribly wrong. You're hitting the panic button. Um, I think as like a fifth option, I would probably take Tannehill over Baker. But yeah, so I think Rodgers and Carr 1A, 1B, Lamar is 2, in my opinion.
All right. Yeah, I personally, I mean, I'm a fan of the Dolphins, so, but personally, I don't like trading so many picks to get a quarterback. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to cost a couple first round picks, or at least a couple high picks to get the guy, and then you got to pay him 50, 60 million on top of it. Um, I don't think he's been a guy throughout his career that's given the team a friendly deal to help fit other weapons under the salary cap. Um, and then Lamar, like you said, he's a great player, but he's injury prone, and you got to give up so many picks to get a guy that's never played a full season. I just don't want to do that. You guys have built a young team through the draft, and if I was a fan, I wouldn't mind signing, even a second tier guy like maybe a Gardner Minshew, or a Tannehill, like you said, if I couldn't get a Derek Carr. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo has ties to Robert Saleh, so maybe they go that route. But like you said, he's injured a lot. Um, but if you're going to keep Zach Wilson on the roster, who's to say he doesn't improve next year playing behind a Jimmy G, um, or another veteran? And when they go down, maybe he can step in and do something. But you guys get a legit quarterback, definitely a playoff contender, no doubt. Um, the strength of that defense, if you can get Brees Hall back, if you can get Elijah
Yep.
Vera Tucker back, and all these guys that got hurt for the season, if they can come back and be similar to what they were last season, you should be in good shape.
Yeah, no, for sure. That I mean the key thing is health. Like just the Jets have always, for whatever reason, the Jets are the most unlucky team. They're every year they have either most or close to the most amount of players on injury, and it it's so deflating every year. But a little bit back to Rodgers, I don't think it's gonna take multiple first round picks. I think it might take something like a second this year and like conditional pick next year. I think if they do make that move, that's something they really have to work into that contract or those stipulations. Because if he's here for 1 year, then flakes out and leaves, well, then why are we giving you a first round pick next year too? He's in order to be moved, he's gonna have to renegotiate that contract with the Packers to make it more friendly. So it'd be around like a $15 million cap hit this year and 35 next year, and then like 40 something the year after. But I mean, those last couple of years can be void years too. Yeah, like I said, I mean, I would go for Rodgers, but I would have to put a deadline on a timeline. Like, okay, if we're not there, if you know, then just give up the third, fourth round pick for or whatever it is, and just get Carr, get that consistency. He could still bring it to the playoffs. He'll be here for more years than Rodgers. The more years you go to the playoffs, the better chance you have. So I mean, it's kind of quality over quantity at that point.
All right, yeah, no, that's you make a lot of good points there. If you can get Rodgers for less than a first, He'd be the number one target for sure. You guys would be a legit Super Bowl contender with that defense.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So, I mean, regardless, it's going to be an exciting offseason for us. Just see what happens, and then excited for next year too. Next season, see what happens, man.
Thanks, Rob. And everybody, be sure to check out Rob's channel, Random Jets Fan, on YouTube. Check it out, subscribe, and be on the lookout for more information as it comes out throughout the year. The Ultimate Superfan Challenge starts soon with Free Agent Frenzy at the conclusion of the Super Bowl. Sign up and play today for your chance to become the Ultimate Superfan. Free to play, only with the League of Superfans.